Well, why don't you tell us a bit about CABE, its mission, and something about the association? You want to take this, Don?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Before I talk about CABE's mission, I probably would be remiss if I didn't talk about our vision, first of all. And our vision basically is the CABE is passionate about strengthening education through high-performing, transformative local school board superintendent leadership teams that inspire success for each child. Now, that's a mouthful, and I understand it, but it's what we believe in as an organization. Our mission is to assist local and regional boards of education in providing high quality education for all Connecticut children through effective leadership. And I mean, that's the general theme throughout our CABE's presentation, is the fact that we see ourselves as the leaders of education for all of the children, and I emphasize all of the children. CABE basically is an organization that of 160 plus school districts are members, and that's just here in the state of Connecticut. We offer a various amount of services that range from helping policy development, negotiations service, superintendent search, board development workshops. If you're having problems with media, we have people that will help you to work through that, and to include also unemployment insurance. We have been doing a lot, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about this later, with diversity, equity, and inclusion. We started the program about 5 years ago, but it has really taken off this year. And I like to think I had a little bit to do with that because of my experience going through. But it hasn't been done by myself. It's been done through Bob's leadership and Bob's pushing on the other side. So we have as a governing part of our organization a board of directors, and that board of directors has a total of 31 people that sit on that. There's 7 of us that sit as an executive group. There are 9 area directors that I may talk about a little later. We have 3 committee chairs. We have 5 city reps and 6 associates, plus one of our members, former president, is an NSBA director. So she has elevated herself that she is representing the Northeast region as a NSBA director, and we're so very proud of her. Bob, anything I missed?
Advocacy. That's one of the biggest things we're doing. One of the biggest things that Don does. He's on the State Board of Education, as well as he's been so busy with his town, both on the finance side and the school side. But we spend a lot of time advocating at the legislature in Washington, before the State Board of Education and other agencies. And I think that's one of the things that we are always asked to do more of. Sort of like NSBA, whenever they get anything saying, well, what can we do more of to help our members, advocacy is always very high up there. And the reason is because we want to persuade. You know, Don talked about how we have a passion for working together and working to make great school board superintendent relationships. And that, frankly, as you know, Doug, that's one of the most important things you can do as you try to raise the achievement of the students in our schools. We all care about the students, but if the things at the top aren't right, it's going to be much harder. So
Right.
I feel a very strong passion for that. Diversity, as Don says, and we can talk about your next question if you're ready for it.
I think we're ready. Our subject today is CABE's response to the pandemic, CABE's strategy for meeting the COVID challenge. Why don't you tell us about the strategy in a nutshell, and how you developed it, how you went about fashioning it. You want to take this, Bob?
Yeah, I'll start. Well, the most interesting thing, I think, is back in February, almost more than a year ago, we, for the first time, had a strategic plan for the association. Within a month, that strategic plan, while still important, was very much upended. And what we tried to do was what I think good nonprofits and other groups do, and that is keep our eye on the needs of our members. That's what we tried to do from the beginning. We tried to provide them with stable, thoughtful, comprehensive leadership that made it easy for them to, not easy, shouldn't use that word, but easier for them to go back and make the decisions they had to make. We began to do some things that we had not done before, including every week we'd have what we call our board chair check-in and updates. We supply updates. We bring in people who are experts on some of the issues that are before the boards and superintendents. We always have at least half of what we did enabled board chairs to talk to each other. Now we have over 160 board chairs in Connecticut. It's a lot in a small group, but despite that, many of them don't talk to the people right next to them. We have regional educational service centers, which are like BOCES, intermediate districts, but not everybody serves on that, even though all the districts are in one or the other. But the important thing was to give people a chance to vent, to talk about what they didn't like, to discuss what they were doing. You know, when we started off, we had, I think, 6, each of the regional educational service centers had its own little group to discuss what they do in their area on COVID. When would you let kids back? What are you doing as far as sports? And what eventually happened was the commissioner, now Secretary of Education, and the governor decided that they were going to forge ahead with what they were doing and not so much listened to those particular groups. But we enabled the commissioner to hear what our people were saying. Certainly we were in touch with them all the time, not only the commissioner, but other people at the State Department of Education. And we really tried to provide in layman's terms to our board members, this is what's going on. This is who's going to make the decision on whether you're open or not. And it was a very, very tough, I'd say 8 months, because nobody was sure what how COVID would spread, how it would affect all of our schools. We had our superintendents putting out plans. They needed 3 for each district as far as, are we going to be remote? Are we going to be a hybrid, or are we going to be all in school? And I think it's the beauty of the board working with the superintendents that Connecticut has done very well. At this point, we have a fairly low positivity rate. More than half of our school districts have at least some of the kids in school full time. And there's, I think, a feeling among, well, epidemiologists we heard yet last night, they're almost feeling a little giddy that we've cracked the back of this horrible disease and we're going to be able to move ahead.
So how did this strategy you've described emerge, basically?
I think we spent a lot of time talking to our executive committee. I talk to Don nearly every day, you know, and I think the most important part of the strategy was not only those meetings, but that we opened up all of our services, activities, and programs to even our non-member districts. So everybody had the opportunity to talk to each other and to work together. And frankly, I know we'll get to what the end result was, but frankly, it was very good for us in that some of those non-members saw how we work, saw how we strive to help them, and ended up becoming members at the end of this. You know, it's one thing to say to somebody, you should join CABE because we do advocacy and policy and so on. It's quite another for them to actually call on us and see us in action. And I'm really proud of that. We have a terrific staff and a wonderful board, and they work really well together.
Good.
If I could, to kind of piggyback on Bob's remarks. I went in as the CABE president in November of 2019. And like Bob said, we had this retreat in February of 2020. And I had all of these ideas about what I wanted to do in my 2-year presidency, which is coming to a close in November. And not only that, but you know, a lot of traveling, attending advocacy convention, leadership convention in Chicago, NSBA conferences, even our own CAPS convention. All of that went up in the air, gone, gone. And which, you know, so it's been a difficult, very difficult year for me personally, but it caused me to have to step back. And like Bob said, we do talk all the time, and step back and reflect on what I needed to do to be a part of this program of CABE, continuing to be successful, because our ultimate goal again is doing whatever we can do for the sake of all of the children in the state of Connecticut. And we have done that. I mean, Bob talks about, you know, the CABE, the board chair call-in, but on top of that is the CABE, the listserv, and that's ongoing. Every board chair is connected automatically to this Connecticut listserv, Connecticut board chair listserv. You got a question, you got a concern, you got something that you really don't know what to do with, whether it's negotiations, whether it's hiring a new superintendent, whether it's to put athletes on the field or whatever. You can go to that listserv, type in a question, and it goes out to everybody in the state, and then here come the answers back. And you know, some you can say, nah, I can't do that, I can't do, but you get varied opinions that kind of help you in your leadership of your own local boards. And you know, that's what we're hopefully all about, working together. One word that kept resonating with me when I thought about this interview is communication. Communication. And that's when I was writing some things down that I wanted to talk about, I looked at the communication kept appearing, because that's a key. That's a key to our successful leadership. And I think it's been very important.
You know, it's funny, excuse me, funny Don mentions the listserv. I think in a time of crisis, just being able to, at any time of the day or night, send an email, even if it's venting, if it's unhappiness, if it's you saw something really good, it gives them the opportunity to at least feel validated and that they are at least being heard by the chairs. And I will tell you that one of the darkest memories I have is what happened in Sandy Hook, which was obviously in Connecticut, where we lost 6 staff and 20 kids, young kids. But I remember the morning after, the chairs were using this, as I'd never seen them before, to say to each other, have you done a security analysis? Where are you in this? How are you feeling? I mean, it was just wonderful. And I think, especially for board members who are not paid, who very often represent constituencies that are different and who have different experiences and skills, the opportunity to just talk to somebody else in the same position is really, really important.
So you're a state association. Obviously, routines were upended. So much that has been done in person is them was done virtually, and we're not fully back yet. How has CABE fared as an association during this period? What's been the impact of COVID on you?
Let me lead off, Doug, if I could, because here again is where I will talk about communication. What has CABE done in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, where everybody's got to wear masks everywhere? Everything is basically shut down. We're no longer having face-to-face board meetings. All of a sudden, we had to learn a new language, and that was a language of go-to meetings or Zoom. And
Zoom's become a verb, you know. I got an email earlier today. Let's Zoom tomorrow.
okay,
And I think a year ago that would have meant nothing to most of us.
it would have meant nothing. But and most groups, a lot of groups that I deal with are using Zoom. CABE happens to use GoToMeeting, and which is as good, if not better, than Zoom. But I don't tell the other folks that. So you know, but we've had to use that, and that has sufficed us. Going back, board chair calls. You know, and we originally did it when the pandemic first hit every Thursday, because people had a need to come together, had a need to talk to somebody, to avoid what I refer to as COVID depression. They had a need to be able to just to have a adult conversation with somebody. So we've done that on Zoom or GoToMeeting. We've also, I mentioned earlier, one of our services is we have area, what do you call them? Area directors. Okay, and those area directors, CABE is broken up into 9 areas, and we have an area director. They'll sometimes looking for 2 area directors for every area, and they have a central responsibility of in contact with all of the board chairs in their area. So we've got that as a area, as another contact. So we got all the areas covered. Legislative breakfast, everything is virtual. So you would think I would have lost weight by now. Well,
Oh, you look very trim, Don.
Hasn't turned out that way. My problem is I've got too many things on my desk, like peanuts and crackers and so I'm constantly snacking. But legislative breakfasts that are being held virtually with areas. We had one a couple weeks ago with Area 2, which is basically the greater Hartford area. And then a lot of individual phone calls. I can't tell you how many phone calls I have made to folks. Would you like to come back to CABE? Wouldn't you like to come back to CABE? Because we've offered our services to them, recognizing everybody is going through this. So even those that were not members, we opened our door and said, come on in. Any way we can help you, we will do it.
And this is not for a fee?
It was gratis on our part, especially with the board chairs. But they utilize it with helping with their policy development, because now you got to come up with some new policies, COVID policies. All right.
Right.
You know, we have, and I don't know if it has anything to do with COVID, probably more so with the state of the country and the Black Lives Matter movement. But our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which we started 5 years ago, and it's been kind of going along slowly. It picked up pace tremendously. We brought in a consultant, and that consultant has given us some things, a lot of things to think about. They've done various webinars, and so that has kind of taken on a life of its own, positive life of its own. Also, we communicate via our CABE journal, which comes out still once a month, and various articles. And again, a lot of them focus on COVID, Black Lives Matter, the insurrection on January 6th at Washington, D.C., and just things that are relevant in our country today.
So, gentlemen, what have you learned from this experience? Meeting the COVID-19 challenge, the pandemic challenge. What are the lessons that you've learned at the top of CABE, the board president and the CEO, the executive director?
Well,
and where do you see CABE going from here as the pandemic gets under control and the crisis recedes? How will you be different? Kind of two questions in one, but.
Okay, let me start with the first one, and that is, you know, what kind of lessons did we learn? I learned something that is repeated itself again and again in my now 40 years with state school boards associations, and that is, it's all about the relationships. My relationship with Don, mine with the executive committee, his with the executive committee and the board. We really try to get to know why people are involved with us and what we can do to help them. And for us to offer things, we're not a charity, and I have to do my best to bring the budget in as well as I can. But I realize now, as when I came into CABE, that if we provided really good help, analysis, thoughtful analysis of things we were getting from the state and the federal government, and actually began to build up relationships with people, they came back into the association. That's what really did it. And even today we had one of our board chair check-ins, and I was looking at the names of the people, and they're all people we didn't know before this. Even though
so you actually increased your membership.
Oh, absolutely.
And hence increased your budget.
Oh, a little bit. I mean, it will take a while, but we brought them in. you know, everything's perspective. I always tell this story that when I was in New York State school boards, you go from Albany to Buffalo, 5 hours, you did it, you probably slept over and you came back. In Connecticut, you go the 1.5 hours it takes to get across the state, basically, or 2.5, and people have to pack 3 weeks in advance. I mean, they have to, it's really all about perspective. People don't want to travel that much, especially in the winter and especially with COVID. So here we were providing services that all they had to do is make a phone call or get on a call, on a Zoom or go to meeting call. And it was right with them. So I think that that's something really, really good. And Don, why don't you talk about where we go from here?
Hmm. Well, before I do that, let me just mention, because I've talked a little bit about our diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't know sometimes where I'm getting the time, but I also serve on the NSBA DIRE committee, which is dismantling institutional racism in education. And they've got me not only reading a book a month, but reading various articles and some very rich, powerful conversations. Like I said, I'm in office until November, but I think when I reach that point in my life, I think I will be able to look, and I said, think I will be able to say I'm leaving CABE presidency better than how I found it. And, you know, I have, again, my focus has always been the children. And we have people in place that's going to continue that work because it's as important to them as it is with every member of the board. Everybody's got, you know, they've got things that they're going to focus on. I got somebody on the board that's art focused, somebody on the board that's focused on sports and athletics, et cetera. Somebody's focused on elementary, high school. It's a varied board, but it's a good board. And I wouldn't trade this experience for anything in the world. And I think nothing but positive thoughts for CABE in the future.
So basically, you said, whether you're a member or not, we're here for you during COVID.
That's right.
We're a source of information. We are a connector organization, so we connect you with other board members and board chairs throughout the state. And so you've actually, I think you told me in one of our earlier conversations, formally actually increased your membership.
Yeah,
fairly significant.
Let me just add to that for a little bit. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, we offered the services because it was the right thing to do in the middle of a pandemic. People needed our help. Nobody knows how to do things better than Bob's staff. I mean, we are board members. We're not, most of them are not teachers. I'm a former teacher, but majority of board members are not. They never got close to a classroom. Bob's people know what to do, how to do it, and those services were provided. And we didn't provide those services because we wanted to pull them back in. That's what ended up happening. So, you know, if you're a believer in the Bible, et cetera, you know, if you do good, good will come back to you. That's what has happened. I mean, we refer to often to the Big Five, and these are the 5 largest city districts in Connecticut: Hartford, New Haven, Waterbury, Bridgeport, and Stamford. We only had 3 that were members. 2 had dropped off. By the time we got to the point where we are now, we now have all 5
Hmm.
have rejoined, plus other larger districts in the greater Hartford area. And then all of a sudden now we are the place to go. Maybe because they appreciated what we did and they realized we can do things better together than separately.
Now, gentlemen, I'm going to throw in a question we haven't talked about, but I don't think you'll have any trouble answering it. What impact do you think the pandemic, and hopefully we'll be talking about it in the past tense in 3 or 4 months, what impact has COVID-19 had on your programming, on either the technical aspect or the content? In other words, how the mechanisms for presenting programs and the content of programs. How will this change?
Well, we don't know how it will change in all respects.
How do you think it will change?
I think there will be a much greater willingness of board members, school staff, and others to do things via Zoom rather than all having to drive the same place. I am very concerned, and I've told this to NSBA and I've told it to our convention committee. I don't know if people will still be willing to put out the money for a hotel and airfare and meals, plus the price of a convention to actually go there. I am worried about that. And it's not, I do think in some ways, there's a positive that I think we're getting more people we did in Connecticut, getting more people we might not otherwise have reached. I am hoping that with a new executive director and new thinking about all these issues, that they will also be able to reach people that you can't reach to come to a convention or some other kind of meeting. So I think there's going to be some difference there. And my hope is that the bonds we've created in Connecticut with our members are strong enough that we can go forward. You know, there are 2 areas which I think we've concentrated a lot more on, and it's because I think they were exacerbated by COVID and last summer. And one Don has talked a lot about, and that's diversity. And you know, over the summer, we had the George Floyd cases and all the other cases. And I think people were looking for help to understand that. And we tried to do that with the diversity work we've done. We've also had the actual COVID effect on students and staff. So we're more involved in social emotional learning than we ever have been before. We work with Mark Brackett from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and we provide workshops for our members, and they certainly provide it for their staff on social emotional learning, because a lot of kids are coming to school with a lot more trauma than we've had in the past.
Don?
Let me just, basically, I kind of echo Bob's comments. I don't think we will ever be what we were. I think we're going to feel the effects of this pandemic for a long time. Again, there are going to be those that are going to get back on the airplane and fly everywhere and do everything. I've taken a lot of cruises in my adult life. I'm not sure I would get back on the ship again. I'm really not. I'm also, in my other life, as I like to say, I'm the chair of the deacon board at my church. Okay. Now, we have been able to hold church because we have a very good broadcasting system. And, you know, in a lot of ways, I'm the chair, but I enjoy going to church in my pajamas. And on Sunday morning, I could sit in front of my TV, in front of my computer. But not just because people are getting lazy, people are just not that trusting. It's going to be a long time.
It will be.
Is it a bad thing? I'm not sure. Do we need conferences for 3 or 4 days? Or can we do what we need to do in a day, day and a half, and get in and get out? I don't think we're going to get over this for a long time. And people are just going to be very careful. Not everybody, because there are governors that are not going to be careful, but I think for the most part, they're going to be much more careful than they have ever been before. I mean, 500,000 deaths is a horrible pandemic unto itself.
Certainly is. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking better part of an hour to tell us about CABE's meeting the COVID-19 challenge, the pandemic challenge, and where you see us going, though we are seeing through a glass somewhat darkly at this point. I really think we'll see in-person meetings come back. They may be different in some ways, but can you really imagine not having the pleasure of personal interaction? Literally.
That's the best part of so many of the conventions.
That's right. So, but we'll see. Meanwhile, be safe, be well, and we'll have to do a part 2 down the pike. See where you are then.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Take care.
Yeah.
Right.